Hey guys, and welcome back to Honey in the Rock. I'm Sophie, and today I have a really exciting episode with my friend Grant James. Grant and I worked camp together for 2 years, but I wanted to give a little intro to this episode before he joins us. And so, if any of you have heard some of my story before, I had a friend named Grant that I grew up with. He was like a brother to me, and when I was in the ninth grade and Grant was 16, he was killed in a car accident, and my life was forever changed. And in a lot of ways, it was shattered. But I have seen over the years the Lord turn this tragedy for good. It was the reason that I actually woke up to the gospel and why I needed the gospel personally. And so I miss my Grant all of the time. I think about him every day. And so I had never met another Grant after my Grant died, and I just never met another one, and I never really thought about meeting another one until I showed up to camp last year. And there was another staffer named Grant, and we quickly became friends, and then I got to share with him the story and why it was really sweet and powerful to have a friend here on earth again named Grant. It was sweet to be able to hug a Grant and update him on my life, even though this, my new friend Grant does not replace my Grant. It is really sweet and redemptive of the Lord and his kindness just to allow me to have another friendship like that. And so, and Grant was kind enough to listen to all my stories and hear about my friend Grant that passed away. And so it's just really sweet and kind of the Lord. And so this episode personally means a lot to me because it has been such a important and massive thing in my grief journey. But Grant also has walked through a lot of different trials, and his testimony is really beautiful in the ways that he depends on the Lord and honors Jesus in everything he does and points everything back to Christ is incredible and beautiful. And so I'm so excited for you guys to hear from him now. Well, Grant, thanks for coming on. Welcome to the podcast.
What is up, Sophie? Thank you so much for having me.
Um, you've been a dream guest on the podcast for a really long time. The listeners
Let's
have
go.
been anxiously waiting for this
Come on.
arrival. So thanks for coming on. Grant, tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you do with your life.
Let's go. So I'm from Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, a really small town, about an hour south of Nashville. I'm currently student teaching. I start on Monday. I'm going to be a PE teacher. I coach baseball at the high school I graduated from. So yeah, just super excited about that.
Yeah. And he has two of the cutest nieces you'll have ever seen.
For
Um,
sure.
that's how we bonded quickly at camp. We worked camp together, and I had little kids that I missed at home, and he had his nieces that he missed at home, and so we could show each other pictures because not everyone cares, but we
Yeah.
cared.
They're
Um,
absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. We've been riding four wheelers. We've been doing all kinds of stuff, enjoying
they're
the summer.
nice.
So
They're living the
living the
life.
life.
Well, sweet girls. And then you have an older brother.
Yeah. So what the cool thing about that is he actually lives in the house right beside me. So I get to see my nieces literally whenever I want to. So a dream come true
Yeah,
for
they
sure.
probably love that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we will just dive right into it. Um, Share maybe some stories from this summer or something you learned, um, and just like how you saw the Lord moving.
Yeah, for sure. Literally the number one lesson I learned this summer was just how nothing is a coincidence. I'll just share a quick story. So from week two of camp, it was so Monday, my job is holding tank. So those not familiar with Fuge camps, we kind of just play with the kids and wait until the youth pastor gets them registered. And so after that, we get like an hour or so to go back, get a shower, and go to dinner. And so, what I usually did on Sunday nights was I usually got some food so I wouldn't have to go to the cafeteria on Monday. But really, just I had like 45 minutes, and I really felt like I needed to go to the cafeteria. And so I go in there, and again, 1,000 students, around 1,000 students at camp every week. I go in and I just randomly sit down with this guy named Josiah, and he starts telling me, just about his life. He starts telling me his favorite Bible verse. It came from Jeremiah 29, for I know the plans I have for you. And then I share with him something that had been on my heart was from Psalm 139, verse 16. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. And so we was just talking about scripture. And the cool part about that is we get to meet our Bible studies on Monday night, and Josiah ends up being in my Bible study. So that was a cool connection. So I do Bible study Monday night, do Bible study Tuesday, and then Josiah comes to me and he's like, Grant, man, I got to share a little bit about my life with you Monday, but I really got a cool testimony that just came full circle with you. And so Tuesday night, we sat down after dinner, and he began to tell me about his life, how he was an athlete. He had Division 1 soccer offers, Division 2 basketball offers, and then all of a sudden he tore his meniscus. He had multiple things wrong with his knee, and he was just in a really dark spot. He began to share with me how 9 to 10 months ago he was doing some stuff, harming himself, just in a really tough place, and then. He was sitting on the basketball bench because he couldn't play. He was hurt. And this guy came up to him and he was like, I can tell something deeper is going on with you. Can I pray Psalm 139 over you? And he said it was Psalm 139 that totally made him run to Jesus.
Mm,
And he was like, what are the odds that the first thing you sit down with me and say comes from a passage from Psalm 139?
mhm,
And then he was in my Bible study. And so, again, that was just, he was saying that was confirmation that he already had from the Lord. But me saying that
mm,
from Psalm 139 was even more confirmation. And that's just one of the many stories of how I saw literally nothing was a coincidence this summer. God was in every little detail. God knew exactly when he was on that basketball bench that I was going to be his Bible study leader that week, that I was going to share a passage from Psalm 139. And so it's just cool to see how God's been in every little detail for sure.
yeah, and, like, we really don't serve an accidental God, but then seeing
Mhm.
things like those straight up examples is
Yeah, like that can only be God.
no,
Like
literally.
there's no other explanation for
No.
that.
And then even the verse that you're saying was, like, it was recorded in his book, and it was, like, it was ordained for him, was what your
Yeah,
psalm that you read to him was, and then the
yeah,
Jeremiah passage that he was talking about was, like, "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord." It's like, the Lord has these plans, and then he's ordained them, and then also nothing's a coincidence. How do you say that word? Coincidence.
a coincidence.
That one. Yep. And so it's like so evident that even both of
Yeah,
these verses go to the theme that you saw. And it's just
yeah.
actually insane. And
It's just yeah.
he
Go
the
ahead. I'm sorry.
he's so divine. Like
Yeah,
that you normally didn't eat in the cafeteria and then that night you decided to and
yeah,
then like literally we can sit anywhere and you chose to sit down next to this student who then
yeah,
happened to be nearby. Like how the Lord ordained both of y'all's steps so intentionally so he could experience Jesus is beautiful. And
yeah.
also like the Lord doesn't need us, so he wants to choose us. Like if you weren't willing to do that or you weren't willing to say yes this
Sure.
summer, like he would have used somebody else, but
Mhm.
he like the Lord wanted to use you. And so like how kind it is of the Lord to like use us in those ways.
Yeah, like we put our yes on the table, and God's going to use that. But it's in those moments, where it would have been so easy just to take those 30 minutes to rest because you know how crazy camp is,
Mm,
to not go to the cafeteria. But it's when we choose the hard thing of yes, even though this may sacrifice me some time and some rest,
mm,
God was able to use that. And I've been able to share, I get chills every time I share that. I've been able to share that since I got back home from camp with some people at my church,
mm.
just seeing how evident it is how God's in literally everything.
Gosh, that's incredible. Well, how did you meet Jesus in the first place? Where did that come from? What's your testimony look like?
Yeah, so again, I grew up just like most people in the South, going to church every Sunday and Wednesday. I had two parents in my life who, again, we was in the church doors every single time they were open. But with that, like I grew up. I heard all these Bible stories of how Moses parted the Red Sea and Noah built a cool little ark. Like I knew all these facts, but I really didn't know what a relationship with Jesus looked like. And so I was at a men's conference at my church when I was 11 years old, and I'd heard the gospel before, but I truly felt that night how Jesus had died for me.
Mm.
Like I've heard growing up, Jesus died for our sins. That's cool, but I remember feeling it in that moment, like that personal connection to Jesus being on the cross. And so again that night, I remember coming home and telling my parents I really want to give my life to Jesus. And so, again, 11 years old, didn't really know what I was getting myself into, was still just going to church every Sunday and Wednesday. And that's kind of what my relationship with Jesus looked like. And then fast forward to 2 years later, my older brother, like I mentioned before, he would have been a senior in high school. Him and my mom go to New York, and they get back from the New York trip, and she just begins to get really, really sick. And so I've been the type of person growing up to where I see the positive in everything. Somebody does something wrong to me, I just may think they've been having a bad day. Like I just try to see the positive in every situation. And so the same thing with this situation. I just thought, hey, this is just going to be she's going to be sick for a little while. Like everything's going to be fine. And then turns out on her birthday, so I just turned 13, it came back that she had lung cancer. And so, here I am. I'm a new believer, just over a year. And, the godliest woman I know in my life has lung cancer. And so, again, a lot of questions come into play of how, like, why is God doing this to me? You always see this and you think, man, that's never going to happen to me and my family. But it did. And so, that's really where my prayer life started to become strong. Just praying every night that this situation will work out. Um, and unfortunately, her condition got worse and worse and worse. And here I am, 14 years old, freshman in high school, and my mom passes away. And so again, that was the biggest gut punch I could have in my walk with Jesus. Um, but I remember my dad sitting us down, me and my brother, and was like, "Hey, we got two choices we can make in this situation. We can either run towards the Lord in this, or we can do whatever the world is telling us to do." Just like how you see people go through terrible, terrible situations, and instead of running to God, they choose the world. And I'm thankful that I had a dad that kept us in church every Sunday and Wednesday. Um, but throughout high school, um, again, my relationship with Jesus was just church going. Like that's all I knew. And that didn't really, my relationship with Jesus didn't take off until really right after high school. I met with my children's pastor, and he started showing me what a walk with Jesus looks like. How it's not just about attending a service once a week for an hour and a half. Like walking with Jesus is 7 days a week, through daily scripture reading, through a prayer life. And so, again, I remember. I become an uncle my freshman year of college, and that truly changed my life. Just wanting to be a godly influence for that little girl. Um, and so, with that, I'm starting to try and take ownership of my faith. And one of the things that comes up is camp. And so, summer 2024, um my children's pastor again is trying to get me to do this camp, and it's one of those things where I just don't want to do it. Just kind of ignoring his text messages when I see him at church. I'm like hiding my face, like please don't see me. um and so I end up doing this camp. 3 hours before it started, I called him up. I was like, "Can I still do this?" And yes, you can still do it. And so I do this camp. I had 10 fifth grade boys in my group, and they were absolutely incredible. They had so much knowledge about Jesus, and was wanting to grow in that. And that was awesome to see. But it was also God like telling me, like, I have these 11, 12-year-old boys who are pursuing me, and you're in college. Like, why aren't you pursuing me like they are? And so again, that was a slap in the face moment of, hey, I need to be pursuing the Lord a lot harder than I am right now. Um, and so again, that summer, I meet Kyla, who was on our team last summer with Fuge, and she encourages me to apply to Fuge. I'd never grown up going to Fuge, never grew up going to camp, but she begins to explain to me that this is a 2 month process where you stay for 8 weeks and you do camp every single week. And so again, I grew up going, or I graduated, went to community college, like never been away from home, extremely out of my comfort zone. And so I don't put my application in until 2 weeks after applications are due. And I'm thinking there's no way I get this. But then 3 days later, I get told I'm going to NGU. And so doubts begin to creep in of, do I know enough about the Bible? Do I have enough knowledge about Jesus to lead a Bible study? And so this is one of the biggest God moments in my life. I was driving, like I said, I'm a baseball coach. I was driving to one of my baseball games. Again, I live in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, and as I'm driving, I'm having again doubts of South Carolina. Like I've never been there. Can I do this? Can I lead? And as I'm driving, this car pulls out in front of me, and I slowly get up on it, and it's a South Carolina tag. And so again, I think, all right, God, that's pretty funny, but surely just a coincidence. And then 2 weeks later, I'm having those same doubts in my head of, can I do this, God? Do I know enough? And this song is playing on the radio, Zach Bryan, Funny Man. And in that song, it talks about how God has a sense of humor, how God is a funny man. And so I'm not kidding. As it says that line, this car gets in front of me, and it's a South Carolina tag. And so again, I that was just a confirmation of, yes, Grant, like God was telling me, you are equipped, like you can do this, you can lead. And Fuge Camps has totally changed my life. It's grew me out of my comfort zone so much. It's showed me how to take ownership of my faith. It showed me how to share my testimony. Um, and it's just been incredible to see life change every single week at camp, and to have stories like I just shared with you about Josiah. Like, that's just one story. Like, like we have 7 weeks of that. So it's been cool too. Um, with coming back from camp last summer, I was able to disciple three of the guys on the baseball team. We was able to meet once a week or once or twice a week. And it's just been really cool. It's so much more than coaching baseball, getting to pour into those guys. And so again, I joke with people all the time. These last 2 years, I could really write a book about how God has just totally changed my life, and how God is using someone like me, just from the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, and he has chosen me to just do His work, and it's been incredible. So I hope I wasn't long winded there, but that
Doesn't
is how God has been in my life for sure.
Yeah. Well, I first think that the question that your dad asked you is life-changing. Of like, are you gonna go run to Jesus? Or are you gonna go with the world? And I think in grief, or just even in like trials and hardships, like the world seems so um like much better. It seems like it's going to numb
Mhm.
the problem or fix the pain. But as we know the things of this world, it just leaves us empty and void. And so I think that's really sweet that the Lord was with your dad in that as he continued to raise two boys in that. And then you guys got to run to Jesus together in that way, but also um, what a maybe typical thing it is for a lot of kids who grew up in church. And I know it was part of my story too, of like
Mhm.
lukewarm faith. And I'm
Sure.
really good at showing up to church on Sundays and maybe having the answers, but like, does my life actually reflect who Jesus is and what he's done for
Mhm.
me? And it didn't. And I think it is like for you, it's like having nieces all of a sudden, but it's normally something
Mhm.
that like wakes us up to be like, wait, am I actually following Jesus?
For
There's that
sure.
song, it reminded me when you were talking of, it was like Monday Morning Faith, and it's like, hell's not
Mhm.
Monday morning faith if it only leads, or a Sunday morning faith if it only leads to empty praise.
He prays, yeah.
I can worship on a Sunday morning, but if Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday are all empty praises, then like who cares? That's not
Yes.
threatening to the gates of hell at all. And like I want my life to be a threat to Satan. Like I want him to like be afraid of what the Lord is doing,
Mhm.
because he knows that like God has the power over that. And so I think that's just a really cool part of your story of like the ownership part comes in, and then when we take ownership, the Lord gives us opportunities. And for you, that looked like coming out of your comfort zone and maybe using
Sure.
sixth grade boys or whatever that looked like. Um, and I don't know, I just was it's interesting to hear that part of your story because, like, obviously, I saw you working at camp, and
Mhm.
there was, like, a confidence that you could walk with. Each week, I had a conversation with, like, the girls in my group, and they would be like, "What do you look for in this? What do you look for in this?" And I would always say, like, "There's a way to be confident and not cocky." And
Sure.
that's how you walk out in life because you're confident in who Jesus is, but you're not, like, cocky. And
Yeah.
I think that's really beautiful of you were able to do something with confidence because you knew that Jesus had called you to that. Um,
Mhm.
and it clearly wasn't out of your own strength and you were living out of that. And so I think that's beautiful and just the ways that the Lord gets our attention by, like songs on the radio or a South Carolina tag or
Yeah.
and that's also funny that South Carolina is unknown to you because that's obviously like all I know. And so
Yeah.
like there's a South Carolina tag. I'm like, yeah, of course there was. Like, I guess
Yeah,
that's
like
normal.
just context, like I am 7 hours from South Carolina and I'm talking in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So again, a year and a half later, I've still yet to see a South Carolina tag on my road. Like
Right, of
it's
course.
only a God
Yeah.
thing. And again, that's not saying for those listening, like you don't have to have this crazy God story of seeing car tags
Right.
to know God's goodness. I'm just grateful that God did show me a sign like that.
Yeah.
But again, it was just so evident that he was in my summers, the last 2 summers.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also too, like it goes back to that first kids camp I did with fifth grade. Like
Mhm.
if I don't put my yes on the table for that one, then I don't meet Kyla who tells me about Fuge. And
Yeah.
so again, I would just challenge the listeners too. Like if you feel like
Mhm.
God is calling you to something, put your yes on the table because like if you say yes this first time, he is going to open up so many more doors
Mhm.
for you to be used for him. And again, I'm just so thankful that I did say yes that first time because it opened up so many doors for me.
Mhm. It's life changing.
It
Um,
is.
it's incredible. But that really is like when I see your life, but then also hearing you say your testimony now, it really is this like it's a humble confidence that you walk
Yeah.
in. And it's really beautiful. And I also think um last summer I remember we had this conversation, and I can edit this out if you don't want me to, but there was a song playing during worship, and
Yeah.
it was talking about how it was like healer and provider and all of these things, and I just was like almost was like weepy because I had been leading these students all week to come and trust Jesus and know Jesus, and I believed it for myself, but I had just watched my aunt die of cancer, and like
Mhm.
she was not saved, and so it was all these like things like I am singing that I saw that Jesus is this great healer, but then
Yeah.
the two people that I love dearly have both died, um and I was just like, what in the world? And I said that to you, and then
Yeah.
you shared about your mom, and I think it was really cool to hear that part of your story because again, it was just like you were just calm and confident of being like, yeah, but this is who Jesus is. And like
Yeah.
maybe both of our stories didn't show this healing on earth, but your mom was healed in heaven and there's healing and there's this perfect healing when we know Jesus. And so I think that also is just interesting. And then of course this year they played the song again and our saying as
We
you
was
put
beside each other.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crap, this is the song. Um
Yeah.
And I was just, like, looking and I was like, "What in the world?" Um, and it just is, like, a reminder of the Lord, like, does see us and He does care about our questions, and I'm sure, like, you had seasons of doubts and seasons of questioning the Lord of what He was doing,
Sure.
in your mom's sickness and in the, like, the hardships that come after that, but then to be confident in who the Lord is still, because it's worth it. Like,
Yeah.
if Jesus isn't who He says He is, then what is the point?
For
Um
sure.
and even though we've both faced that hardship and experienced death in those ways, like we're confident in who Jesus is. And
Yeah.
there genuinely is no point without him. The things
Mhm.
of this world just are not going to satisfy. Um, so thank you for sharing your story and being vulnerable and putting your yes on the table because your obedience, the Lord is rewarding in really great ways, and it was incredible to watch.
For
And it's
sure.
incredible to be your friend and,
Let's
um, you know, have a normal person at camp.
let's go. Can I share one more story about that?
Yes, please.
Um, and so again, like I said about my mom, again, it's so cool how God too uses just our trials for His glory. I know, I think it was week 7 actually. Lydia from our team
Hmm.
asked me to speak to one of her students named Gabe, and he was just sharing with me how he lost his mom when he was 9 years old. Um, and so, again, I was able to walk him through that of how I dealt through that, how, it wasn't something that I wish for, obviously. But I know that my relationship with Jesus would not be what it is now without going through that.
Hmm.
And so I sat with him for about 30 minutes, just sharing with him my life since my mom had passed away. And then I learned the next night that he gave his life to the Lord. And so again, like if again her awful death, if that just leads to one salvation, just one,
Hmm.
like, is it worth it?
Yeah.
I mean, I would think so. And so again, it's just so cool how God uses our trials to bring, His glory
Hmm.
in the end. Uh,
Gosh, it's literally incredible.
yeah,
And then again, that goes back to what you said you learned this summer of like
yeah,
nothing's accidental in that.
I think,
Literally nothing's accidental, and the Lord is powerful enough and mighty enough to turn all things for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. I don't know if it reminded me of it. At the beginning of the podcast, I shared, like in the introduction before you hopped on, um, I was like, I never had a friend named Grant after my friend Grant died.
uh,
Um, and then, so I met you, and then my in one of my weeks, I had a Bible study student named Grant, and he was a ninth grader. And again, now I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, I literally had not known a Grant since he died. And then I met you. And then all of a sudden, I had this one that I got to like love and pour into. And I sat down with him and I told him about Jesus and how I came to meet Jesus because he was just like sort of on the edge. And I was like, this is how
mhm,
Jesus radically changed my life. But it took the death of my friend, and his name's actually Grant also, and it took his death for me to be woken up to the seriousness of the gospel and why I needed to live for him. And I got to share that with this student named Grant, and then 2 days later he came up and was like, Sophie, I gave my life to Jesus. And it was
yeah,
again that full circle moment of the Lord was kind in providing me a friend of you and giving me another Grant to be friends with. And then the Lord was redemptive in, oh, if this one student needed to know Jesus through the death of my friend, then it was worth it.
yeah,
Because Grant knew Jesus, he's in heaven. And so
yeah.
now another one knows. It's insane.
Insane. Nothing is a coincidence,
No.
truly.
No.
Um, and that's just been so evident. Especially this summer, just so many stories I could share of how God was literally in every tiny detail.
Yeah.
And man, it just gives me chills every time I share it.
Yeah.
But
It's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your story. And we'll have to do a part 2 where you come back and share more stories.
for
Because
sure,
sweet. Well, thanks for coming on, and thank you guys for listening. Bye.
yeah. See ya.